Hello, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and this is the Great Work Launchpad episode 40, continuation of Shadow Work part 38, and a continuation of Fear or Love 23. So welcome one and all. And bring aboard Mr. Brandon Spencer. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing tonight?
All right. Had a stomach bug yesterday, slept 20 hours, so doing a lot better today.
Yeah, those always suck.
Yeah. The Great Work Launchpad is about getting launched into the great work. That's what we're here in this podcast, vidcast, whatever you want to call it, trying to do is get people launched into the great work of taking in the truth, embodying that agape love, that true care, and outwardly trying to create true freedom. So that's what it's all about here, and that's why the importance of this ongoing series on shadow work and the fear or love, because that's what's the internal part within you that's going to manifest externally as that drive towards trying to create true freedom, trying to restore true freedom. And where's my little thing? Is it this one? Yeah. So I'll plug Mark Passio's How to Become the True Media. If you need help getting some skills, go to this thing, sign up. I think starting from July to December you can sign up. Now it's over, so you can't sign up because it's already started. So next year you could do that. And you could go learn it on your own if you don't want to pay money to have someone take you through step by step on how to be competent in computers and how to get to the point where you can create content. Either way, you got options. The knowledge is out there. You just got to go find it. Not too hard to find. So how to become the true media.com for more information on that. And at the end of February, 21, 22 February, is Freedom Under Natural Law Conference number 5. So that's freedomundernaturallaw.com to get more information. The 5th one is titled Ignite Hearts and Minds. And Brandon Spencer will be a presenter there. And you got your presentation done, I imagine?
No, because I've been kind of instead of like doing like 12-hour days, been kind of doing it like 2 hours for each day. But it's going to be done this Friday, and I'm going to record it this weekend. Sometimes I like to try things different, and instead of just being so overly focused, and just doing like day after day of like 12 hours, I'm like, yeah, kind of slow it down. So, but yeah, it'll be done by Friday, and possibly he'll record it this weekend.
Cool. And yours was something about, oh my God, I can't remember, being a knight or something. The armor,
No,
is it? I'm
yeah,
thinking of a
yeah,
knight because of armor or something.
yeah. The armor of righteousness.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Like
Because the
speaking all
knight of
from a
righteousness
yeah,
defending. Yeah, cool.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. Speaking from a symbolic, her representation. Of course, he's going to be talking about natural law. Like no one should be surprised what I'm gonna be talking about. But yeah,
Cool. Look forward to it. Yeah, so this week we're getting started in the fear of sacrifice. If you're not familiar with Mark Passio's work, obviously you should be by now, because that's where most of us got a lot of our knowledge in the depth that we have it. If we haven't dug deeper, like I have, like Brandon has, into these concepts to try to bring more light to it. But Mark Passio has it's probably my favorite presentation, that 45-minute one or 50-minute one or something there that he delivered at the first or the second Greater Reset Activation Tour or something like that by Derek Bros.
Yeah.
It was hard hitting. It was great. And then he did a 2-part continuation on his podcast, 3 hours each, going into more depth, and those are great. So that's what this is based upon, is that so you can get it from Mark Passio, or you can get it in my form with like saying it in different ways, maybe adding more to it a bit here and there, but it'll be essentially the same thing, same message across, maybe with a little less vitriol as Mark Passio does it, but that's all good. So we're talking about sacrifice. What is it to make a sacrifice? So there's different types of sacrifices that can be made. And maybe when people think of this, it's like, oh, talking about the Bible, be thinking about, what is it, Abraham sacrificing his son Jacob, or I forget who it is and what their names are. But anyways, there's the tale of that. And then there's the whole, it's not supposed to be literal. It's supposed to be an allegory of how you're supposed to be willing to sacrifice the things you hold dear for God. For it's like, so you can interpret it as like serving truth and serving a higher purpose, that you're willing to sacrifice things, not that you will, because I think in the story he stops him right before he will, but it's seeing how, if you take it allegorically, is how devoted you are to being willing to sacrifice the things you care about in a personal sense for a higher aspect, something higher than you, greater than you, and if you're willing to sacrifice for that to achieve that. So that's one way you can interpret it. Not everyone will necessarily interpret it that way, but there's that aspect, and so you can think of that as sacrifices, burnt offerings, sacrificing animals. People can think of sacrifices like that. There's also sacrifices that parents make for their children. If you're going to be doing things, if you have children, you're going to have to sacrifice your time and your attention and things that you would otherwise want to do with your life, but now you have other responsibilities, so you have to sacrifice things for your children. And even in that respect, or even if you don't have children, you could maybe be in a life or death situation where you sacrifice for your children, or for another person, you sacrifice your life for another. So there's different ways that sacrifice can apply. But what we're talking about here is the sacrifice. It's related to those things because you're sacrificing something that you have, but for morality, for moral truth, for the restoration of true freedom, for the end of our enslavement, for the end of evil. That's what we're talking about here. So we're talking about what is it to actually make a sacrifice towards those ends. Well, that's sacrificing your time, your effort, your energy. So of your time, of your effort, of your life, not literally your life will be ended, but in part. I'm not talking about giving your life for another, but in part, you're sacrificing part of your life, because the parts of your life that you could have spent time and attention and effort doing other things, well, you're going to be sacrificing that and putting it towards this higher goal, this true care, agape love goal of being involved in the cause of freedom. So those are the sacrifices that are ultimately required, and the fear in the sense of an aversion. We've talked about this a lot, since this is like the 23rd part on the fear or love aspect. But it's the more of the aversion, not the fear of the fight, freeze, or flight aspect, but it's the aversion. It's this force of fear that can be represented through aversion, where you're averse to it because you don't want to let go of the other thing that you want more of. So you're not willing to sacrifice that. And then because you're not willing to sacrifice it, It's because you don't value the other thing more. So you have this fear in the sense of being completely averse to letting go of the thing that you want to have for yourself selfishly, personally, and you're not willing to do what is required to serve something that is more meaningful and more selfless, or more serving of what we term the higher self or truer self, related to where you're just focusing on a lower aspect of yourself, of your personal life. You're not looking at the bigger picture. So when you're not getting involved in the cause of freedom, you're not willing to make that sacrifice. Well, if you are doing those sacrifices, it's where you're not just cheerleading for the cause of freedom. You're not watching from a distance. You're not observing from the sidelines as a spectator in that cause of freedom to restore our natural state, which is of just being free and not having our rights infringed upon. So you're not going to cheerlead or watch from a distance or observe as a spectator while your life or the lives of those you say you love or claim that you care about hang in the balance, because that's what is ultimately at stake here. Is your life and the lives of those you care about are in the balance. Maybe not necessarily in the terms of you're going to literally die, not in that terms of life, but the life of being able to give your children more. What decent parent doesn't want to have their children have a better life than they did, or have more of a quality of life, or have better things in life. And the ultimate definer, the ultimate determining factor for the quality and condition of our lives is the aggregate morality of everyone around us, allowing us to live in that higher quality of life. So we're not talking about material quality of life. We're talking about not being violated, not having your rights violated, not being stolen from. So that's where you don't have violence being done upon you. That is the highest quality of life, not if you have $1 trillion or if you have 10 cars and 20 houses and all the money in the world. That's not the quality of life we're talking about. We're talking about, because you could have all that and still be stolen from. So the highest quality is not being stolen from, not being violated, where morality is the aggregate condition. So caring and being involved in freedom, is that just to sit back and watch the movie on the screen? Which is what most people think, right? They just think, hey, I'm watching this, or I'm watching Mark Passio, I'm watching Derek Bros, I'm watching Alex Jones, I'm watching whatever. And they're thinking to them, yeah, I'm involved. I'm involved in the cause of freedom by just sitting back here and watching. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do think that. And so, no, that is not being involved. That's just being the spectator. And you're being a cheerleader. You're like, yeah, go, woo, yeah, you're doing great. Yeah, go, keep going. And then some people might even be like, that's my team. I'm a part of that team. That's my team. Those are my guys. Yeah, so go truthers, or whatever. So, yeah. If you know the true dynamic of why we don't have true freedom, which is the objective difference between right and wrong, but you aren't active in trying to publicly make that knowledge available widely and freely for others to receive it, you are being lazy and cowardly, because you're probably have some fears behind it that keeps you cowardly and not overcoming those fears, those things that are holding you back. And if you don't have them, then at the very least you're lazy and you just don't feel like doing it. You don't care enough. So if you're laying down, or you're sitting down, or you're standing up, but you're still doing nothing with all those movements that you might be doing or lack thereof, then you're of no help to the cause of restoring true freedom. Um, and maybe you can be shaken out of those states of not doing anything with whatever you're doing with your time and your energy and your attention and your effort. And you can be shaken out of those states to become active. And that can involve, that's usually by hearing the hard truth of your current state of being, of how you're failing in that responsibility, that you're either ignorant of recognizing that responsibility, or that you want to shirk and reject and deny and ignore and dismiss that responsibility. And that's where Mark Passio has, I guess he excels in that domain of telling people these hard truths about where they're failing in their current state of being, in that lower self, and how they can transmute and modify themselves into a higher version of themselves relative to where they are at now, by telling them things about how they are failing in their current low state of being, which they can overcome if they want to. And a lot of people don't want to hear those harsh truths because he is harsh about it. And yeah, they just don't want to hear it, so they reject the message and the messenger and go continue to be a spectator on people who don't criticize them as much. But then, yeah, like I'm saying, maybe, so there's some people who can hear that and they can be shaken out of it, but some people, well, you probably can't hear how you're failing yourself because you're too soft and weak-minded to be able to handle facing your current failings. And that's how we are. For most people, they judge, insult, and offend themselves by their own actions. And if someone's accurately describing your actions with maybe pejorative words or ad hominems that still accurately describe what it means for your current actions or your failure of action, what that means about you, and you don't want to hear it because it sounds nasty, well, yeah, you're too soft and weak to be able to handle it, to be able to light a fire under your ass and kick you into high gear. Did you want to add anything before we continue? I saw you writing things before.
Yeah, oh man, the pussified mindset, like I don't get it. People still say, Mark is being too harsh. It's like he's saying what's true. It's like it's not about the tonality. It's about, like it's about what's true. But yeah, how we talked a few weeks back, how you mentioned, 24 hours in a day. You have you 8 hours at work, 8 hours of sleep and just 8 hours to do, most things. Well, there's never enough time to, to do, what you want. So there's always means of sacrifice. So, in order to do this work, in order to do anything in life, you have to sacrifice, your time. You have to sacrifice, your attention. You have to sacrifice your focus in order to learn things. You have to sacrifice your energy. And yes, you do have to sacrifice your care because there are things that we care about, certain relationships, certain people, certain things that the physical, being may want to partake in. But we sacrifice our care for those things in order to do this kind of work because we care about freedom, we care about truth, we care about how true morality, and we care about the true greater good of humanity. So I think one of the things that people struggle with is like when they just hear the word sacrifice, they take it so literally. They just how equate it to, like, how, like you said, like how the religious terms, sacrificing a physical, a person, or sacrificing a animal, compared to like understanding, the deeper, meaning of it is, in order to do any action in life, there's going to be a level of sacrifice. Just to get out of bed, it requires a sacrifice. So, get into, not out of the how literal, how have mindset, but broaden your scope, and have deeper, have awareness or deeper understanding of words. So, how you can truly understand like what we mean of the fear of sacrifice, that how people are willing to give their energy. People aren't willing to spend the time. People aren't willing to spend the focus, let alone to even take in this knowledge, because this knowledge isn't, very well liked. Have philosophy and truth, are dangerous concepts that most people don't even like. But even the ones who have this knowledge, they're not willing to act upon it because they don't care enough, because they would rather still stay in that selfish, have mindset, or there's still some deeper, underlying fear and some internal work that they still need to get done. And then two, I'm gonna kind of talk about something I put in my presentation. If you are an individual, right, and you see the conditions, all around you start to deteriorate, sort of like we have now. We are going more and more into slavery. There's a loss of freedom. There's a loss of rights. You see more government. So the conditions are deteriorating, not for the good. So an intelligent being, an intelligent individual would want to assist in changing or fixing those deteriorating conditions, around them. And almost like if you were in a room and the room, is starting to get dirty, it's starting to build clutter, it's starting to deteriorate. An intelligent individual will want to fix that, will want to clean, will want to get involved to stop the spread of that health deterioration, because there is a law in reality that given it enough time, all things will start to break down, all things will start to decay, all things will start to deteriorate. So we have the intelligence, or we should have the intelligence, to recognize that, to become aware and cognizant of it, so we don't let that deterioration and decay happen. Well, apply this to society and the individuals who say they want freedom. They recognize that the conditions around them are deteriorating, but yet they're still not doing anything about it because they don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to get involved. They have that fear. So, are you truly intelligent if you see the conditions around you, breaking down, but you refuse to get involved? You refuse to act. What does that say about your own, inner makeup? Because a truly intelligent being, a truly intelligent, individual would get involved in the cleaning up process. Sort of like we are trying to do. We are trying to shed light on the dirt, shed light on the decay, on the moral decay that's everywhere, and we are asking for help. But sadly, not enough people want to shine that light on that decaying process. So hell, again, it comes down to a level of intelligence too, because what human being would want to just stay silent when the conditions around them are deteriorating to such a degree? It may get to a point where it's going to become unfixable, with everything that's going on now. But, hell, just use the analogy of, you need to clean your room, sort of what Jordan Peterson used to say, have back in the day. Well, first you need to clean the internal room. Then once you have cleaned that, then you can start helping assist in this external room, how that we are all, sharing together.
Yeah, that's what Pasio explains it as exporting the entropy. And he refers to it as applying your will. And that's one way that I forgot if I mentioned it in my last presentation on the Law of Freedom, Part 8 on chaos and order. But I think I did. And it was along the lines of the will can be used to create chaos, to keep descending things more into that entropic, involutionary fear modality. And through that, what's in the person, they can drive that as the external condition. But the will can also be applied in the opposite sense, for more of the evolutionary, agape love, true care, syntropic pathway. So it's not that will is automatically an ordering force. It can be used for disorder, but that is what is required, is the application of will in order for you to take the dust in your room and put it into a can, which then into garbage bag in your can, which then goes into like a garbage bin outside, which then gets picked up and then it gets sent somewhere else. So like in a lot of senses, yeah, we're just shifting it around and moving it around. But when it comes to good versus evil, that's not what we need to do. It's not like we need to like take the immorality here and move it
Right.
over there,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
That's more what they do with the prison system is like, well, let's take it over here. Let's not reform them. We don't need to teach anybody morality, and we can just
Yep.
go on being ignorant and blind of what morality is, how it creates freedom, how it can prevent people from creating violence, from stealing from others, and have a more harmonious life. We don't need to teach any of that. Let's just take them from over here, put them over there, make them more hardened in a hardened area, and then they can come out more desperate and more hopeless than before, because then no one wants to hire a criminal and there's no actual reform in anything. And for a lot of things are just
Yep.
petty crimes. Well, they're not even crimes. They're just bullshit that they make up as crimes. Yeah, so I just want to mention that yeah, we're not trying to export the entropy. It's just in the sense that to deal with entropy, you always have to apply your will. Well, not in the universe overall. There's like natural processes. There's the syntropic force, creation of planets and stars and a bunch of things that keeps on going. And then there's the dissolution of stars and planets, and that happens. And so there's these two forces at work. But when it comes to things that are created by the human will, well, it's most likely going to require the human will to oppose that creation as well. So a system of enslavement created by humans who keep it going, well, those wills keep it going. Well, you need the opposition of human wills to bring order to that chaos, to try to dissolve it and make it go away. All right, that was the point I had to make.
Will's got to be backed by knowledge and care.
Yeah,
Will
care.
backed by
There's the
knowledge and
thing.
care. Yep.
That's the other point. You can have will, but where's your will going? And what's going to determine it is your will based in true care, or is it based in a dark care? So if it's based in dark care, well, you're serving that entropic involutionary fear path. And if it's based in true care, then you're serving that true care, agape, love, higher evolutionary syntropic pathway. Yeah. So hearing hard truths about how you aren't measuring up to objective morality is for the strong-willed. People can talk about it. I can talk about it. I've talked about it in your own. I had an article, one of my first ones, Truth is Love, I think it was called. Love is True. I think it was Truth is Love. And that had to be with the whole concept of how speaking the truth is an act of love, because you're trying to convey what is to someone, and it can be harsh sometimes, but you have to actually be right about it. And there is more nuance, and you can be more delicate. And it comes to issues of morality, then you can be more direct. And if people don't want to listen to you about the immorality or your failure to be more moral, then they don't have to listen to you. You can choose your speaking style and do the speaking style that you want to talk about. But if you're going to be able to hear how you're failing in your behavior, or how you're failing to a higher ideal that you're not measuring up to, such as well, this is what morality is, and you're not living up to it. And then you have to be more strong. You have to have a stronger constitution. You have to be more strong-willed. Because a lot of people don't want to hear things that bruise their delicate sensibilities of their sense of self. So you could hear what someone says, and you can honestly evaluate it, and it could be that they're full of shit, and they don't know what they're talking about, and they're just talking smack, and it'll upset you because they're talking smack, or someone could upset you because they're actually saying something that's true that you should reflect upon and realize that, oh yeah, okay, that hurts because it's true. So when you're strong-willed and you can hear things that you don't want to hear, but that you need to hear, and you're willing to listen, even if you get mad at first, well, then you listen and you really think about it, then you're entering cosmic adulthood, where you're actually growing up because you're willing to face yourself in the mirror. And that was the first title of this Shadow Work series. Episode 3 of the Great Work Launchpad was originally called face yourself in the mirror, something like that. 'Cause that's what this is all about, the shadow work, is facing yourself. So those who care enough and want to do the work to measure up to that higher ideal, to that thing that you can recognize, yes, this is a truth, and I'm not living up to that truth. And that's what Ma'at represents, because Ma'at, one of the synonyms for Ma'at is also measurement, because that's what the scales of Ma'at is about, measurement. You put in, forget about Ma'at and just think of a scale, the old school scales. Well, you have something over here, and then you put something over here, and if they weigh the same, then they are in a level line with each other. Like you could take a measuring level with the air bubble in it, and that determines if something's really level. Well, then they'll be really level. Because something could be crooked, but if you draw a line between the 2 points, well, it'll still be a straight line. It'll be not a level straight line. So the point is to have a level straight line, not a crooked straight line between the two things. So in the symbolism of Ma'at is you're measuring by the weight of your actions against morality, because that's what Ma'at represented, was its measurement, but in measurement in respect to morality and law, true law, moral law, justice. So you're measured by the weight of your actions against morality to see how aligned or in balance you are with moral truth. So the heart in the narrative or the story was that your heart was put on one end of the scale and the feather of Ma'at was on the other scale. And if you were too heavy, then your heart was too heavy relative to the lightness of the feather. So you were sunken in your deeds. Your bad deeds weighed you down. And yeah, so if you're as light as a feather, well, then you're on even keel with Ma'at. And that's how you measure up to the feather of Ma'at. That's how you want to do the work to measure up to that ideal. And these understandings, it's no wonder that people don't understand the symbolism of that story, because you look at Egyptology, and how many things in Egyptology you looked at in your life. You looked at a documentary, you can go read something online about the scales of Ma'at, and you're not going to get this understanding. They're not going to talk about it. They either can't, because they don't know, or they won't explain this high-level truth symbolism of Ma'at scales. I would surmise that most of them, it's not because they won't, it's because they can't, because they don't get it. They just don't get it. And so you need to correlate other knowledge with visual representation, symbols, in order to explain the symbols in a different way. And they don't have that other knowledge to do that correlation, that correspondence. So most people live the lie of telling themselves that they are on the right side. Well, I'm on the right side of history. Oh yeah, I'm a truther. I'm in the freedom movement. I watch this and I read that and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm involved, what we talked about earlier, thinking that they're involved. And that they're on the right side. Well, depends what they think by right side. Are in the right side because you're listening to people and listening to information that is aligned more with what is right versus what is wrong, more with what is true than what is false. Okay. But are you thinking you're on the right side and you're thinking that makes you a truly good person, but you actually aren't because you don't even know what it means to be a truly good person? I'm not saying you have no aspect of any quality of good. So again, this is what I've talked about earlier in my work, this dualistic conceptual framework where pretty much everything is can be looked at in a dual aspect of light or dark, or good or evil, or moral or immoral, or hot or cold, or many things. And so there's polar opposites, and then there's the spectrum in between where pretty much everything is. You can have absolute good and absolute evil, whatever you want to fathom that could be, as horrible as absolute evil could be, and how pure absolute good is. You don't even need to be able to accurately conceptualize that in this dualistic conceptual framework. All you have to have is an idea is one relative to the other, where you are on the spectrum of it's more towards what is evil, more towards what is good. Is this brighter than something else? Well, if I have a 2000 lumen light versus a 10 lumen light, well, they both have light, but one's brighter than the other. Well, the same thing about good and evil. You can recognize that I can characterize a certain behavior or condition or state of being here, and I can characterize this one here, and I can see that this one's more on the negative side, this one's more on the positive side, and then you can also see variations, the multiplicity and diversity of different other states in between those as well. So when people think of they're on the right side of something or that they're a good person, it's not that you don't have any qualities of good. You're nowhere on the good side, and you're only on the evil side. No, it's like, yes, everyone has qualities of good, and we all have darkness, and we have qualities of evil, especially if we haven't worked on them. We have more than other people who have worked on them to choose not to go into those qualities. But people don't really understand what being a truly good person is. I'm not saying an absolute good person. I'm not saying in the absolute sense. I'm talking about truly good in the sense of understanding what objective morality is and the goal of serving objective morality in the pursuit of ending immorality, ending our enslavement, ending evil. And we can think of, what's worse? Believing you're more good than you are, or not caring if you're good at all. What would be worse? If you're ignorant or delusional or whatever, and you're in a false reality, lying to yourself, and you believe in this fantasy that you're more good than you are, or if you're like, I don't even give a shit if I'm good or not. I don't care. I think the second one's worse, because then you don't even care. At least the first person cares a bit, at whatever degree, and they're living in the illusion, because that's the world we've been set up in, is this big deception of what words are and their definition, and even our own current condition. So people can't see reality properly, so they're not going to be able to evaluate things properly, because the reality has been obfuscated. So most people have bought into false definitions of what being good is, and a good person, either one, recognizes the presence of evil, and two, most importantly, works to end evil. So if you're going to recognize evil, great. That's like what I call the Great Work Level 1, where you know the symptoms, you know the effects, you know it's there. And then 2 is, well, you work to end it. And the first part of that second level is you work to end it in yourself. And then you work to spread the knowledge of this so that other people can end it in themselves, so that overall we can end evil everywhere. And obviously that is done by speaking truth, hence the great work. That's what the purpose of the great work is. And most importantly, moral truth. We're talking about morality. Evil is created by immorality, so if you're not speaking moral truth, then how could you possibly expect for evil and immorality to be ended? So speaking moral truth into existence to potentially affect the minds and hearts of our fellow human beings who have been conditioned to accept the lies that they are shrouded in, and that veils them from seeing reality as it is. So it's this acceptance of lies is why people live in the illusion of good, and the illusion of good, of doing or supporting evil, which is veiled in the appearance of good. And that's one thing in that famous Aquinas on Liberty, as Passio termed it, essay from, I think it was a post on a Prison Planet or Infowars forum 2010 or something, where he starts off with, like, people will have the image or a definition, a characterization of something that they view as good, and then they will pursue it. So you trick people by giving them the false appearance of what is good, and so that they will view that as acceptable, or indeed as something that they seek to pursue themselves, because it's in the appearance of good. It's veiled in the illusion of what is good, even though it is not. I'll pass it to you, Brandon, but first I'll say, hey, Derek. How's it going? Long time no see.
What's up,
Yeah,
Derek?
yeah. How's it going? Been on many travels and too many experiences to recount, but yeah. Chris, great to see you. Brandon as well, of course. I'll let you have it, brother.
Real quick, I said, how's your presentation coming?
Not
I said,
good?
Derek, you hear me? I said, how's your presentation coming?
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you muted.
That's right. Self-inflicted muting. What is going on? But I am computing and calculating quite a spicy substance for those to be impressed upon many things to ponder. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep it at a kind of riddle, vague idea of things because I'm caught up in the Lord of the Rings and many ideas and imagination that it all brings. So yeah,
All good. All good. Um, yeah, Chris had talked about or had brought up, have my yacht. A lot of people still take that so literally, man. Like it's it's crazy. And yeah, a lot of people who even talk about, my yacht never really get into the measuring of the moral behavior, and like you have the scales, but they never he'll equate it to you looking at your own behaviors, and it was opposed to you, being fair and square, and you analyzing your behaviors to the standard, which was Marriott and the feather, and a lot of people don't really make that connection, sadly, but that's what it means to be fair and square, and even how the square in symbology gets a lot of demonization, but it was used as a tool of building to be upright, at the right angle, so you see how a lot of stuff, got demonized throughout history. But hell, some great points. Hold on, let me check my notes real quick. Oh yeah, one thing I want to talk about is how I would say one of the most loving things that you can do is tell someone the truth. So, in this fear of sacrifice, if you truly do love someone, if you truly really love and you have care for someone, you will tell the truth regardless of how hard you may think it is. And I would say that's the most loving thing that you can give someone is you gift them with the truth, you know, and like how you want to portray it, you know, that's upon you. But as long as you give the individual, the truth, then that is the most loving thing that you can do. And that's why we do what we do, is because in doing this kind of work, we are showing that we truly care, we truly love, humanity, that we are willing to make, the sacrifice because we have that true agape, and we're trying to encourage others to develop that true agape and to shed that fear and to, make that sacrifice and, focus, have attention, care, put that willpower, put that energy in doing, this kind of work. It really isn't that hard, it all starts here, you know. It all starts here, then it goes here, then it goes back here, then it goes here, and it always keep going, back here because it's already, with the care. Because without the care, then you'll never get started. Without the care, you never continue, and without the care, you'll stop. So, you know, care is going to be that driving force that should help you shed that fear and want to sacrifice, to want to get involved. You know, that's what I had to learn. Because you can have all the knowledge, how you can talk about how natural law, you can talk about morality, but without that care, at the end of the day, that knowledge is just stuck in your head.
You want to add anything, Derek?
yeah, sure. And through a good amount of observations, even just through the out the past couple months and that kind of stuff. Yeah, uh, people can talk a whole gang of things and wonderful ideas and this and that, but where's the action and the care and the will force and the motivation and the like kind of like that um carpe diem, seize the day with these hands, right? And yeah, I love it. We always have to go back, they have to work in tandem, kind of like the mind and the heart. And how many people are really navigating from their heart of hearts, having that moral compass and all that stuff. And yeah, along the road and this path work, it requires a lot of sacrifice, whether it just be one's time, peace of mind. Brandon, you're talking about, telling people the harsh truths. And even myself, I had a lot of hesitation with, saying certain things to people, of just because it could disrupt a whole, friendship or relationship or that kind of stuff. But, is it worth it? Because I think it is. And the reason being is that, when you come to know certain truths and this and that, and I know this sounds kind of vague, but not to like bring up personal examples, like sometimes when you see someone doing something that's not of good quality, it's kind of mediocre, they could be doing things more efficiently, they could be saving money, saving time, saving their life force energy, whatever, and you want to tell them something, but they're so ego attached to the way they do things, and they might have that Taurus energy of just being stubborn or whatever, you know what I mean? And you just know that they got that those self-defense mechanisms with the ego about to, draw S words with you, or maybe even worse, S words, swords, words that are kind of stabby, if you know what I mean, with the intellect, taking it back to the tarot and all that jazz. Yeah. What do you think, Kris?
Yeah, I guess what I didn't follow what you were saying with the S words. I'm like, what S words? I guess you were playing on like the swords and that it's cutting S word. Okay.
Yeah.
S words, sword.
Intellect stuff,
S word, sword. Yeah. That was pretty clever, but yeah, it went over my head at first.
I didn't make it up, but yeah, it went over my head first as well when I heard it.
Hell, I'm just used to hearing Derek talk, so hell, I know he's gonna come with the green language a lot.
Cheers.
Yeah, what well, Brandon mentioned the square and upright, and yeah, so there's negative, don't be a square. Like every time I think of that, I think of Pulp Fiction, where Uma Thurman's like, "Don't be a square," that you're lame or boring or something. So there's this negative representation of the square in that respect in our colloquial language, that can view the square as like a diminished representation, diminished symbol. And even in like the whatever spiritual or whatever symbolic representations, and people of that mindset, they can even look at the square as not representing things good. Like the circle is supposed to represent the infinite and the spiritual, and the higher, and the square is the lower, the four elements. And or like saying how there's like nature is all curves and there's no right angles. Like there's a lot less. There's some, but they are rare. But these are just symbols that we can associate, like we were talking about with Ma'at and the scales. You have to have this other knowledge, and then you can associate it with symbols and pictographs and ways of representing that knowledge in different ways through a visual means. All the same with the square and the circle, they can represent different things. And the square, so the right angle, this is what I'm getting at, is this right angle, this positive aspect of right angle, because you had the ka, and the ka was just two arms with right angles like this. And, if you don't have this knowledge, which is what a lot of Egyptologists they're not looking at it in this symbolic sense. So they're just thinking of the ka and the ba'a, these two aspects of the solar spirit and things like that. And it's related to the underworld travel. I don't remember how it ties in perfectly there, but they're forgetting the right angle of the ka and how important that is, because the right angle, ma'at was also righteousness, what is right, moral. The ka was like your spirit or your essence, so it ties back to, these concepts are related, and you can even get into the possible association of ka and ma'at, like transliterating and deforming into ka ma'a, and then karma. It can possibly have turned into that, and which karma will cause and effect of the repercussions for our actions, and there's a cause and effect to the things we do. So I just wanted to bring that in as a little thing before we move on. It's an interesting thing to note of and look into, possibly.
Well, real quick, if people want to dive deeper in that, Kris has I think a 3.5 hour video, talking about that, because that was one of the first videos that I watched, of yours. And remember how the hands, what we construct and build into reality, what we do to each other, how action and behavior.
Yeah, for sure. That's I got that from a book. I forget what the book was called. It was Solving the Mysteries of the Gods or something. I don't remember. But it was really interesting stuff. And then I made it into a presentation, might have added some stuff or whatnot. There was another thing you had mentioned, but I forget what it was. So I guess we'll just move on from there, because I'm like, yeah, I'll write it down. I'm like, no. Right angle ka, and then this other thing, and then no, I forget.
Was it about people, telling people the harsh truth about certain things, whatever?
Oh, I think it was that. Yeah. Because that's what I mentioned before in my article. Truth is love. Well, that's what it was about. Is like the hard truths that the most, as he stated, is the most loving thing you can do is tell people the truth. And we're not talking about, hey, that makes you look fat. Okay, like chill out. That's not the truth we're talking. We're talking about. It's all about morality, the important quality truths that have to do with the failure to engage in moral behavior and higher moral behavior, or doing that immoral behavior, or the lack of doing that higher morality of teaching moral knowledge, of doing the great work, which then puts you into a more of the modality of serving the involutionary fear, stagnation, entropic pathway, because you're not serving the opposite, which is to propel us towards a more moral state, and you're not doing anything, so you're just allowing us to stay where we are, the stagnation, and let others keep driving us downward. That's how it's in the wrong path to not do the great work. So why are you unbegun in the great work, right? Well, that's deadened care. The care that is not activated within you, and that you need to activate. And here's an infographic from my Funnel 4 presentation. So the deadened care is why you're not begun, because you haven't activated that care enough. That care, the agape within you, is not strong enough to activate you. And we can take it back to, this rocket ship. Well, that's the same thing. We're talking about lighting a fire under your ass to get you launched up, get you launched into working for that, to restore freedom. Take in the truth, activate that love within you, and then try to restore freedom out there for yourself and for all of us. Because true freedom is for all. It's not just for you. You can't have it just by yourself. That's not how it works. Maybe if you were on a planet all by yourself, then it would only depend on you. But as soon as there's other people involved in creating behaviors that can affect others, then it's a shared game, I guess you could call it. So the deadened care. Your care is dead. It needs to be reawakened. Your care as it currently is, I'm not saying just like the good, you're not truly a good person. It doesn't mean that you don't have any qualities of good. This doesn't mean that you don't have any qualities of care. It just means that care, that agape, that higher form of love is not strong enough within you to activate you, to make you active in the great work. It hasn't, that fire hasn't grown. It's still just like a little flint and hasn't been ignited into a little flame, the spark to the flame, to a larger flame. Your flame hasn't grown enough, so you still need to do this shadow work I've been talking about for so many episodes, this shadow work, and getting more of that force, that propensity of love kindled within you and built up so that you can get to the point where you're going to become activated in the great work. And if you're not at that point, then you still have work to do on yourself to activate yourself to that point, because that work is to care enough to actually take the actions towards that, where you care about yourself enough because you're trying to end the enslavement that's happening to you, let alone others. You focus on yourself in a selfish way, that you're going to want to end the enslavement that is happening to you. So if you don't even care enough about that, obviously you're not going to care enough about the enslavement happening to other people and care about ending that. You're only going to care about, you're not even caring about your own enslavement. So first of all, care about your own enslavement, and then I guess you can give a shit about other people being enslaved and caring to end their enslavement. But if you don't even care about ending your own enslavement, then yeah, you're in that pretty deep aspect of that self-hatred and self-loathing, where you don't even care about yourself enough to not want to be enslaved. Because if you don't want to be enslaved, okay, you can be like, yeah, I don't want to be enslaved. Okay, well, great. You recognize that you don't want to be enslaved. All right, I'm going to give you a hand. Clap for you. You don't want to be enslaved. All right. Are you doing anything to not be enslaved, to make that condition change? No? Okay, well, time to recognize that you have work to do on yourself. Face the harsh reality that you do not care about yourself enough to want to end your own enslavement. And then from there you can, learn more and realize that, oh yes, I need to care about ending other people's enslavement too, not just my own, and widen that care and agape true love even more. And that's why you people who aren't involved haven't gotten involved, despite possibly knowing what's really happening in the world. You can watch everybody talking about things, and even the natural law people, and you know what's going on, you understand the causal factors. So you know what's what, you know what's happening in the world, you know why it's that way, but you're not involved yet. And that's why. I'll pass it to you guys and we'll wrap it up there.
Sure. Yeah. Do you care about your own slavery? You may not care about the slavery of others, but at least do you care, hell, about you being enslaved? Um, and then how you brought up that internal fire that needs to be ignited. Funnel 5 coming up. Ignite. What better way for the individual, to learn what it's going to take for them to get involved. So check it out. How Derek has helped, have put it, together along with, Will Keller, Chris Jansen, Leslie Powers. So, hopefully, people can, check it out and want to be inspired to take action, because at the end of the day, knowledge in and of itself isn't enough. It's once you apply that knowledge, what do you do with that knowledge? What are you gonna do with those hands, that we talked about? What are you going to build and construct and manifest in reality? Sitting back and doing nothing and just being a spectator and just watching, is it going to lead to the betterment of humanity? That's only going to lead to more and more suffering. And like I said, in my presentation, because majority of humanity isn't willing to make the right sacrifice, then unfortunately, children will continue to be sacrificed, and that's the sad truth.
Yeah, true indeed. Unfortunately. And yeah, there's so many people out there saying, I don't have the time. I'm so busy and this and that. Like, is it that hard to cut off, an hour of your day from your Netflix binging or whatever you're doing? Like, human beings, we don't need to be entertained every single fucking day. And there's better ways and more intelligent, conscious forms of entertainment or edutainment. You're learning stuff at the same time of being, you know, amused by whatever degree, or even and then some. So, I get it. There's this threshold of fear that people have to make that choice and do something that's kind of out of their comfort zone or not really well known to them and that kind of stuff. And they feel this burden of sacrifice. Like, is your life going is fucking gravy on the train towards, the best of, how you imagine life could ever be right now at your current moment? Do you think you could manifest something better? You know what I mean? Are we not all enslaved by whatever degree? So like either way you want to slice it, cut it, or whatever, it's just we have a lot of work to do within ourselves individually and in the you know exterior, whether we're at on the physical level in digital communities, whatever. There is so much potential out there that we can, just making the choice of learning a new skill within a day. Sometimes you can just, look at some of these really interesting tutorials. There's oodles of them on the internet, and we learn the crafts and skills that are required to do the great work and do what's necessary at this dire, perilous hour that people don't know what the fucking time it is sometimes. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Oh, sorry. They got, whatever show coming on, and, oh, it's 5 past the hour now, whatever. So, I guess we got to cut it short, right, guys? No, just kidding. But yeah, not to, get all ranty or whatever. But I see a lot of people just, stuck in their ways, being kind of complacent, just however their rhythm is, which is not to the rhythm of their own heartbeat, much less the rhythm of real natural life on the hamster wheel. You know what I mean? It's hard to get off that, or, you can't control the speed of the hamster wheel. It's controlling you to whatever degree, right? So it takes and time, and it's a process to, get back and, reclaim one's mastery of oneself, having that sovereignty within, on so many different levels, not being governed by even like time constraints. How many people are sacrificing sleep, to, get that extra knowledge, get in that extra hour of before you go to bed or before you got to go to work or whatever in the early morning, you know? I can't help it. I'm up at like 4 in the morning, regardless of anything sometimes, like, but that's after like a decade of, just having this nonlinear lifestyle. And, so I say that to, just back it up that it's a process, and getting comfortable outside of these comfort zones and different routines and ways of life, it takes time and acclimation. So have some patience and realize in the back of your mind that, you know, are you doing what's right? Is it moral? Do you have the care for that? And if so, great. roll with that and keep that in the back of your mind whenever doubt, pops up or whatever, or you want to, kind of, go back or a little, you kind of trip and stumble on that path, wavering or whatever. Looking for a different word, but you know what I mean. So hang in there, y'all. It's a long journey, but it's not the worst thing. It's better than just being a slave on the rat race treadmill shit. So yeah. Sorry for popping in a little late, but yeah, I love the fact you're still doing this, Kris, week in, week out. I love the consistency and dedication to it all. Brandon, I see you up in there in the mix quite often too. So yeah, that's awesome. Great to see y'all.
Hell, love the hat.
Natty Law, yeah. Yeah, but what you mentioned, people, is your life going so good now? They could do something to make it better. But that's where they're trapped, though, is this short versus long term. Because when you're doing the great work, you're not going to be doing something to make things better for you now or even probably in your lifetime. And most people are looking to make things better for themselves now in their lifetime. So they're looking at the short term of how they're going to make it good for them now. So get a better job, get a better pay, to get the thing that they want, to improve their quality of life in the material sense. But if it was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be free, like all we have to do is do this for a year and then we're all going to be free, all right, I'll have it in my lifetime, then they'd be more motivated. But because they're not going to see it in their own lifetime, if they can extrapolate the effort and what it takes, then they're not invested in it because there's no return on them selfishly in their personal life. So they haven't, again, comes back to care. They haven't grown to care beyond themselves and look at it as a thing that's going to be beneficial to all of humanity. So they're only looking at how it's going to make life better for them, not how it's going to make life better for all of humanity eventually at some point. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that people are stuck in that. They're looking at it in the wrong way of making their life better. Yeah, they're trying to make their lives better in some way, get a better job, be less poor and stuff, but they're not looking at it in the sense of truly being free and the sacrifice of not even seeing improvements to your own, not even being truly free yourself, even though you're working for true freedom. You're not going to get a benefit from it. You're not going to see the result. So yeah, people don't look at that favorably once they realize what it is. All right. So I guess we'll wrap it up there, and I will leave us in the words of Mark Passio.
Ooh.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
One more time.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
There you go. How about that, people?
Yeah.
Get out there and do the great work so this world isn't such a hellhole. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate it. Thanks for anyone who watches and learns anything from this and maybe does some work of their own. If not, you'll get there eventually if you work on yourself, do the shadow work. So, I guess see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care.